Okay, so it's Ethan, isn't it? We'll explain later. I'm Garth, I'm your local carpet and upholstery cleaner, and this is Ethan from Smyth's trailer supplier. We'll not say dealer. Yeah, so obviously we were having a bit of banter there before we hit play. I like people to bring gifts, just for future guests. It's not compulsory, but it goes down a long way. And we are going to go behind the beer and the banter. Because me being a local entrepreneur, I always loved the stories. Everybody thinks, oh fuck guy, you know, he's in business, he's off on holiday again, you know, or you know, he's out buying new clothes again, that boy. They think that starting a business is the be all and end all. But what people don't see, and what I love for my guests to share, is the fucking ups, downs, ins and outs, and the moments where you want to pull your head off and jump out a window being an entrepreneur. I just think them stories are going to make for good content. Prove me right. Try. So yeah, so welcome, buddy. We're gonna go. No, drink. You want a drink? You got a drink?
Yeah.
I'll get a drink. It's not like me to not have a drink. I'll get one. I'll get one. I'll put these in the fridge actually. It's my secret stash up there. Tommy thinks I'm up here working. She thinks I work over here. So yeah, simple format. Start, middle and end. So we are going to go right back to the start. You know where you were born and reared.
So initially I grew up in Castledawson up in Ulster. You
Yes.
probably know it up there too.
Yeah,
anyway. Grew up there with mum, dad, then and two sisters, and moved into Kern back in like 2016ish, which is like a small village just off the Glen Chain on the left. And then moved in 2 years in after that up to Monterey, and then I've been there ever since, up to the house end you've been at to lift your trailer up there.
Yep. So primary school.
I
So you lived out in the country as such.
well now, yeah. Way
Uh-huh.
back whenever I was growing up, like I grew in a housing estate. Like we would have had like I suppose a very different childhood to what people have now, where like we grew up going out and BMXs and going down
like
to the park and
skateboards
all
all
like
that jazz.
you grew up outside, you didn't grow up inside sitting on a PlayStation or an
No.
Xbox, you know,
No.
that sort of thing.
No.
So we were in a housing estate there and had some good friends, like, you know, and just I suppose it was a very different world back then to what it is now.
Yeah, because it was like you didn't go home till the street lights come on. You know,
Aye.
that kind of thing.
If you even went over that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Whereas now, it's like everybody's so connected. It's like, you know, if somebody doesn't reply to your text message, you panic. Whereas, you know, my generation, you know, growing up in the 80s, we went out in the morning and
Only the 80s.
that's going to go
The
downhill.
face of disgust.
It's going to go downhill real quick. Well, you know, when I got my first dinosaur, you know, around about that time, yeah, you're all out in the morning. You didn't even think about going home till midnight. You know, whereas now, if the kids don't reply to your text message, you're panicking. But way different times. So we used to go down to the 6 Mile River and swim and all. You were dry by the time you ran home to get your dinner, and then you were back out. See if the kids told me now. They were down the river swimming.
It was nearly not wanted down the river.
No, we're near the river, never mind in the river.
Yeah.
Scary times. So summer holidays as a kid. What was the we used to make we used to go over to the local bonfire and take wood, and we would make a peg gun. We used to go steal the wood out of the building, and we'd have had you used to steal your mum's clothes pegs and break them, and you used to get a wee metal bit in the middle, and you used to get a plank of wood, put a nail in, and then you pulled the elastic band back and the clothes peg. That's how old I am, boy. And then we used to go over to for some reason there's always prams in the bunny, always prams. So we'd get the wheels,
The big wee go-karters.
being a go-kart, you know. Whereas now, I don't know, you know, PlayStation is a PlayStation 5 better than that, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a PlayStation, like, but I can't say to play it. Like, it sits there.
I know. I got one last Christmas. I was like, I got the VR headset and all.
Now you're jumping on the trend.
I was like, I'm not going to eat next year. Like, fuck that. I'm not sitting in, save money, and get that wee girl married. Do you know what I mean? I think Christmas Day, I downloaded a few games. Santander phoned me. I'd said, we believe you're, we'll put a hold on your card. We believe there's been fraudulent activity. There was 5 PlayStation games that are downloaded. I said, no. I was fucking mad. Give me Gran Turismo for fuck's sake. That was as far as I got into my gaming career, like. But yeah, so were you out in the streets much? Or
We would have been, as I say, like
football?
there
Were
was,
you footballer? Or?
we would have been football, and we had airsoft guns, you know, like BB guns.
Yeah.
We would have been outside a lot with them, and like we lived right, so like we were, I suppose, like if you're going down in Castledawson off the Castledawson roundabout, there's the first house in the state on the left called Shannon Park, and we grew up in there.
Yeah.
So we were right next then to where the fields started for all the farms. So we actually would have went in underneath like a hedge and like a hole, and then we would have went in there and like put on the camouflage gear and went round, you know, maybe 2, 3, 4 of us with airsoft guns and shot each other and you know all that sort of good stuff. And then your BMXs and you're out about in town and you're down at the park. And I think, you know, like to be honest, we probably spent the majority of early childhood doing that. It was only really later then, maybe like whenever I was leaving primary, so I went to Castledawson Primary, but whenever I was leaving primary then Modern Warfare 2 came out in the Xbox 360, and now that was a big one, but like to be fair, we didn't really play a lot of other games, it was more that, but it was like whenever you were sitting there, you know, R50 caliber and intervention, and you were sitting on some of the maps like Rust and stuff, you know, like them were peak times, you know what I mean? Like you were maybe sitting there playing split screen or something with one of your mates, and like you're in a wee 19-inch TV and you can't hardly see what's going on. You know, but that then I suppose sort of changed a bit for us, but as I say, like it didn't really, like the majority of the time we were outside, like we didn't sit inside, or like even board games or not, we weren't really that way inclined. You were outside kicking a football, or you know, you were doing something silly, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Our wee local park, you know, I don't know by modern day standards it could even be called a football pitch. Do you know what I mean? But we had some memories on it, like pure concrete, like pure concrete.
You know, funny in Castledawson they have a proper pitch there, like because the park, and then there's like an actual football field, and then there's the actual primary school, so like everything's all nearly right beside each other. But it's the same way back then, like you could just go into the park and like go to the football field and straight across the road, and like on the far side of the road you had the shop, but you know, like so you sort of had everything on your doorstep. And you actually had a golf course as well, so the time you go in and left some golf balls and stuff, you know, and run up through the forest.
I can't sell them. What trainers were popular then? What was
you know, that's a good question. It would have been Nikes, but I can't think of the name.
what Nike? Is that what
You know, whenever they were like a
started doing bubbles, started adding bubbles, it was like
no, that would have been nearly more fresher times.
Yeah.
But way back then it would have been like nearly like they were very flat and very thin, but they were like very rounded, but they were like a solid colour, say like solid orange, but had a yellow tick on them. And I can't think of what the name of the shoe was, but them were very popular way back then.
Zooms? No.
I'm not sure, I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, I can remember Reebok Hexagon, Puma Pump, fucking.
Puma's not really something you see nowadays, like.
No, I think it's maybe popular in Japan or something. Everyone just fades away and becomes popular somewhere. Well, Usain Bolt, is he not wear Puma? The runner?
I know who Usain Bolt does.
You glazed over for a bit.
That's because I was thinking about him wearing Puma.
I swore I seen him wearing Puma. Is he from Jamaica or something? Where's he from?
He would be Jamaican, wouldn't he?
Do you know what I mean?
If anybody else is on here and knows that that's not right, skip over this one.
No, everything can be edited. What do you call that? Patreon?
Patreon.
They find it on Patreon. Two Clyde. Fire me two Clyde.
because he doesn't know what Patreon is, it'll not be on there. This is going to be called What's Your Name?
I'll send you a PayPal link. I can do PayPal link. But no, look, I remember summer holidays as a kid. You get up in the morning and you must have watched about 10 hours worth of cartoons. Then you went and called for your mates. But I keep forgetting there's like a 25-year fucking gap between us, isn't there? 20-year gap. You know, like we only had 4 channels. Do you know what I mean? You know.
Well, to be fair, like whenever I was young, I probably would have got up 2 and watched some cartoons, but I don't know that I would have done it all day. Like we wouldn't have got up and sat till like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Like you maybe would have got up because you were a child, you probably would have got up at like 7 o'clock or something. And then you get up maybe at like 7 and watched till like 10, and then we freshened up and then went outside. But that was probably you'd have like 10 o'clock at night until you went to bed, you know. But I suppose looking back now, summer holidays could be long back then because I didn't ever necessarily enjoy school, but it was a long period of time too, if you get what I mean. But at the same time, then whenever you go back to school, you're always looking forward to the next holidays. You know, and like even now as an adult, like we were away, me and one of my friends were away in Poland like 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And like we had left on the it was like late Saturday night, early Sunday morning. We came back on the Thursday morning, but honestly, we were coming home, we were sitting on the Wednesday night somewhere to eat, and my friend Jem was sitting there chatting away, and like I wasn't even listening. I was sitting there posting ads up, you know, for work, thinking about coming home because I'm like, right, I've got Thursday to Saturday.
Paying this credit card off.
It's like I've got a few things here to do and to buy or to you know, I need to get sold next Wednesday, you know, and I suppose you're sort of sitting there and your mind then goes back onto other things rather than being in holiday mode, like from Sunday right through to at that stage in Wednesday. I suppose it was very much like relaxed and just outside of that mode, but then you do sort of switch back in, and I suppose then you sort of think, right, well, what is coming next, if you get what I mean.
Before
even that, like I suppose there's a certain level of anxiety because you know what you have to come back to. If you get what I mean, you know.
Going back to you know, like what's your pet hates with work? You know, like I hate admin.
I don't really mind all that. I would say challenging people could be my worst thing. Because like I've had fellas there, and like there was a fella come up there recently, like within the last month or so, and he had texted me during the day, and that was fine. We had a few messages backwards and forwards. But he texted me then at like 7:30 that evening and was like, "Can I come tonight?" But I was actually out helping at so I'm a leader at like a kids club, you know, and we then like take the kids in, we play some games with them and whatever else, you know. But I wasn't then home till like 9:30 that night, and then I seen the message in at 9:30, and I was like, sorry, I had reception and whatever, you know. And he was like, yeah, fair enough. So he was like, can I come now? And he came up then from Bangor. It was like 11 o'clock whenever he landed at 9 that night, and I suppose in my head I'm like, you know, like you're either just going to go to bed and sleep, or else like you might as well go out and get the seal. So I got the seal, and you know, they're lovely people, and you're more than happy to go above and beyond for them, you know. And like he happened to be going away on cruise, and not that next day, but the next day after that. So we needed the trailer that next day for work, and then at least he had it, you know. So whenever he came back, then he was good to go. Yeah, but you know, so things like that, like I'm more than happy to do. I love that. You see as well too, like they leave you positive feedback, and they're more than appreciative. But you see whenever you get people and they can be like, I suppose, just arrogant and obnoxious and trying to force their hand with you. Like funny, I'm not going to go into any details of it, but I was actually meeting with someone recently, and they were sort of like nearly trying to dictate to me what I was to do. We were potentially going to be doing like a line of business together, if you get what I mean. Like there was going to work for us both. They were going to try and dictate to me, and I was sort of came away and thought about it afterwards, you know. And I was like, the whole point of going out and doing your own thing is that nobody else tells you what to do. For me, with my health condition, doing what I do now works for me, because it doesn't mean that I'm sitting in an office from 9 to 5. If I'm having a bad day, if someone needs to call to see something, I can do that. If not, I'm free to if it means that I need to go and sit down and read, or I need to
can't
sit
put a price
and chat.
on that.
Yeah, you can't put a price on that. So for me then, for someone else to be trying to dictate terms to me, immediately, I'm going to be honest, my body just went into a real, like, anxious, defensive, trying to, there was just something about it.
And you got to listen to that.
Yeah, and do you know what, in the end up, I actually never ended up pursuing it because I was like feeling that's not going to be the right fit, and it could have been a great opportunity, but it was sort of like something internally. You know, it was like, I suppose your peace of mind has to matter to some sort of certain extent, you know, where it's like, I'm going to have to deal with you quite regularly, and if I already can't deal with you, because I actually rang up one of my friends, and he was like, the whole thing seems very hostile from the get-go, and he's like, if that's as hostile now, he's like, what's it not going to be like in the future? And I was sort of like,
that's meant to be the honeymoon period.
Yeah, that's meant to be the
we're only a winner here, lovely jubbly. It's meant to be the honeymoon period of that wee partnership, not the red flag fucking avenue. But no, fair play, well done. Because a lot of people just get the blinkers on, they just see, you know, action moving, and they bypass all the red flags there. So your intuition will serve you well. So primary school was good. Now we're going to move into high school. What was high school like?
Going into high school, I actually went to Markfield High School first year. We would have had like, I suppose it could have been a rough, what I'll describe as a rough enough bunch of people. Like we had just moved into like a, for anyone who's taking offence, sorry. We just moved into a new school like halfway through the year.
Skills combined?
No, like it's
they
just built a brand new building,
right.
and like within like, you know, like so we spent the first 6 months in the old school, or the first sort of like 3 months, towards like, you know, from September to December in the old building, and then sort of like New Year, then we moved into the new building, if you have it, that's fine. And within like the first few months of us being in the new building, they literally had went out and set all the brand new buildings on fire at the back of the school, and then as well then too, like the lads used to stand, so say like you had like that table there was like a bench, so they would sit down and they used to crowd round them so that the lads could take a smoke, and you're like, your first year, like you're 11, 12, 13 years of age.
You're already on Sunday day.
Where are you even getting the cigarettes at? Like if your mum and dad are going into the shop and coming home and bringing you cigarettes, they need to look at themselves and slap themselves, you know what I mean?
Like family tree.
There's problems. So to be honest, so I started off like, you know, in the top set in the high school that year, and to be honest, as the year progressed, it was looking like I was just going to get moved down because my whole work ethic and everything just sort of like went to nothing, and I just didn't care, didn't want to be there,
and you can put that down to the influence of your peers.
Absolutely,
close and distant. You know, so there's a real kind of entrepreneurial kind of, you know, message there for the wider audience. You know, what is it to say, if you hang around with 5 millionaires, you'll be the 6th. But the equivalent is, if you hang around with 5 smokers, you're going to be the 6th. You know, so
you fall into their habits and their behaviours.
Their standards.
You know, yeah. And I suppose that's like it's a challenging thing because at school, unfortunately, you are stuck in that, if you get what I mean. You know, you can't change it. You can't get out of the clique, if you get what I mean. You know, like whenever you're in school, I feel like once you come out into the real world, it's a very unrealistic approach for how the world operates, because like whenever you're sitting in school, it's like everybody sits in straight rows. You know, you're doing.
Listen to the one person.
You're doing like whatever between this time and this time and this time and this. But then like whenever you eventually do leave school, you're literally left in the position, and you're like, do I go to uni? Do I get a job? Do I do an apprentice? What do I do with my life? And then it's like, you know, no matter which way you choose, if you start to work, you have to then like, you know, start thinking, right, well, if I'm moving out into my own house, I'm going to have to start to make dinner, and I'm going to do, and it's like, I suppose, at 18 years of age, then you come out, and it's like, I've now got all these decisions about money and about life, and finally, like, at this stage, I'm not sat down and told what to do between the hours of X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z, and then I don't go home and do homework. I've now got all this time, and to be honest with you, I think that there's a real crisis there in itself, because people are then let loose into the world at 18 who have absolutely no idea, because up until the age from 0 to 18 you've been guided in what to do in life. So
you've been bubble wrapped.
yeah, you've sort of been protected and shielded, that your parents or your foster parents or your guardians or whoever it happens to be have sort of guided you in life.
Yeah.
But now sort of like at 18 you're an adult, go and do whatever you want, and that's a real struggle.
And that's putting it lightly. Because when you think about it, one of the major kind of responsibility that one has for himself is to keep a roof over his head. No one ever talks about it. You go all through primary school, all through high school, and you're this invisible umbrella. You live at home, and you take that for granted, and you never think to yourself, how hard it is and how much of a responsibility it is to keep a roof over your own head.
Well, funny, me and the dad had actually chatted about this earlier on for you, right? Left a bit of stock, and we were listening to a podcast actually in the car, and it was Stephen Bartlett, but there was a guy on it, and he was, I'm going to call him controversial in what he was saying, but they were talking about people finding meaning and purpose in life.
Yeah.
And he was like, nowadays people are struggling more than what they ever were. And I was like, let's bring it back. I was like, you see, years ago, right? Do you know what people had to do in life? Was they had to find some sort of shelter, they had to get clothing, and they had to get food. Essentially, the natural, and reproduce was obviously a big one as well, because they were preparing for the future, having a family, whatever. But I was like, them were the core fundamentals. They were just trying to survive, right? Whereas nowadays, it's like, so many options. They say you want to date, right? It's like you're sitting left and right Tinder, and it's like you're shopping for people now, how you're shopping for food, if you give it a read. And that's so unrealistic nearly.
I know, I do feel for your generation, because nobody, I don't know, but say a preconceived, assumption, nobody works it out anymore. Maybe Tommy would have been over years ago if we were from this generation, where it's just like fucking products, whatever, and just doing the swiping thing. So nobody,
that's they give in too early.
They call it a day too early. They don't.
The grass is always greener.
Yeah. Well, I had drummed into the family. The grass is greener where you water it. Because like how many good relationships fail because people believe the grass is greener on the other side. It's not. The grass is greener where you water it, and sometimes you gotta sit down and have the tough conversations and fucking figure it out and work it out. That's why I couldn't cope with dating nowadays. And because it's kind of allowed to have 2 or 3. Well, I'm dating, and I just have a coffee date and we're just chatting, and he's only a friend, and I could maybe see you on Friday because I'm out on Thursday with a guy. How the fucking make your mind up?
Well, like
I couldn't cope.
I am in that position now. Like, I'm single, and I do sort of want to meet someone and have a family and everything else. Like get married and whatever. But like, I'm going to be honest with you, I am on a few of the apps, but like, I can't say that I find them in any way effective, because it is just shopping for people, if you know what I mean. And it's like, your initial thing will be like, are they attractive? And if not, you're automatically just going to swipe them left, because it's like, well, it would never work anyway if you get what I mean. But at the same time, then it's like, if they are attractive, you have to sit and read down through. But at the same time, the person might write a dry response, but actually be the most lovely person, and could be great if you meet them, So it's like, it's very difficult, but I understand what you mean about the whole 2 or 3 people. I wouldn't be like that at all. If you're even talking to one person, I would talk to solely that one person. I wouldn't consider going out and seeing 2 or 3 people at the same time, or that's not who I am. You know what I mean? And
you meet the one, you have the coffee date or the into the dinner date or whatever, and there's no chemistry. You close the door. Whereas I think now it's just all these doors are open, and it's like.
But even now, like going up to chat to someone, like say like you meet them out or something, a lot of people now, like actually one of my close friends there, and like to be honest with you, I want to see him meet someone, because it would genuinely make him happy. But he's the most lovely person, he's such a kind person and everything else. Like he's very shy, and he won't go up and talk to a girl, or he won't. And like funny, we actually nearly got ourselves at the handling that night, but we were down in the Anchor down at Port Stewart, but he seen this girl and he liked the look of her, but he he's too shy to go up and chat to her. And I was like, if you don't, I was like, I'm giving you the 12 o'clock tonight. And I was like, if you don't go up and try and ask her out, I'm going to go up and get her number for you and say that you like her about you're too shy.
Yes.
So that's fine. So he wouldn't. So there was one fella at the table with them, but there was like 3 or 4 girls at the table. So nobody else was at the table bar her. So I seen the opportunity, and I was like, now you've got an opportunity, go and do it. And he was like, no. So I ended up and chatted to her. And I was like, my friend thinks that you're like, attractive and whatever else. But I was like, he's too shy to come up and get your number. Can I have it for him? Well, turns out her fella was up at the bar. I landed myself on it. But we thought that, right, if you had seen them, we thought that the fella that was with them was the gay best friend, because he came across, there was no, there was no, like,
he didn't present himself as a father.
Certainly. He did, like, he wasn't making no moves on her, or he didn't have his arm around her or anything else, and like, there was no sort of signs that the two of them were together. But as I say, like, he would nearly be too shy about going up to ask a girl for a number or to talk to her, because nowadays there is a bit of that stigma too, where like, are you safe in doing that? Like nowadays you'll nearly see 2 people looking over the room at each other, going sitting swiping Tinder to see can they see
if they're on
it or something. But it's like, I don't know, I feel like there's so many things now are out of balance, and that's what I was going to take it back to. So like, you look back years ago, everything was about survival. So way back then, man's purpose was to survive, if you get what I mean.
Then arguably reproduce.
And everything else. But like now it's like, you go on, and funny they actually talked about this in that podcast that I was listening to earlier. But like now you go on and you sit on TikTok, and every 7 seconds you're seeing something. So it could be like a different religion from yours. It could be somebody who's massively successful. It could be somebody who's living out in Africa in poverty. It could be somebody that's funny, or somebody that's a bodybuilder. But all these things then are literally playing onto you. So then it's like, how do you ever feel content within yourself? How do you ever live a life that's sort of fulfilling? Because you're seeing all these things that you should be a billionaire, you should have a 6-pack, you should do X, Y, and Z. So like, when does enough ever become enough then, if you get what I mean? So like, that's where I think then a massive problem comes from, because all these people are in this like comparison, stuck in the social media of what they see. But way back years ago, you didn't have that. Like whenever you didn't, we chatted before this about not even having a phone, but you've had them same thoughts as what you do now.
Oh, frick, no.
Because it wasn't ever in your mind, whereas now it's constantly in your mind.
It's almost a brainwashing exercise.
So it's like, now that could be a problem for people if you.
I think every generation, the generation before, going before, how they going to pull together, like, how they're going to even 0 hour contracts or whatever with work, or like, they don't sit you down at school and teach you about your credit score. They don't teach you how to get a mortgage. They don't teach you anything really. As you say, once you're spot out, say you leave school at 16, say you don't go to college, or even if you go to college and then you're kicked out, it's 2 years later or whatever, or say you do go on to university and you're spot out even again with more debt or whatever, eventually you're spot out, and it's like, no one's coming to save you kind of position in life. So it's like,
I went to university, I went to Queen's, I don't count, and like, I graduated with 2-1 everything else. But like, I worked 40, 50, 60 hours a week in Tesco that whole time.
Wow.
Like, so I was working pretty much full time. Now, way back then, I sort of had a dream that I was going to be a car dealer, and that was my life's ambition. Now, like during secondary school.
So what happened?
Well, we'll get that. During secondary school, I should make it known that we sort of recognised that there was a bit of potential there, because the way how you always had a kid at school who was your sweet dealer. I was that man. I was carrying around a bag, and I was full of sweets and full of buns to look at you.
I hope that's not a metaphor.
That's not a metaphor. But I was that.
Oh, you were hustling?
I was hustling, you know what I mean? So whenever then I went to uni and whatever, as I say, then I had this ambition that I was going to be a car dealer. But the one problem was I don't come from a money background, and cars is a very cash intense business.
Yeah.
Like, you need a lot of it. So I suppose
if something goes wrong.
If something goes wrong, it's on your head, yeah. So I suppose I was like, I need to try and save as much money now as possible. So I started pumping in serious hours, and at the point, like, I was in final semester of 3rd year, and I was literally sitting at the point that I was like, if I don't pull together my act now, 2-1. So I had to sacrifice like my Tesco hours just to go back to contract and like 16 hours a week. So like literally just get the 2-1, and I did it against 64 overall, so it was comfortably into the 2-1.
Yeah.
So I was happy, but as I say, I saved a lot of money during then. But at 18, you see, I bought and sold a number of different cars, and everything was going great. And then I became like a guy that took trade-ins, for dealers. So say you went and traded in your van to say like a dealership to get a new van, then they would have sold your van on maybe to somebody like myself who was just taking the stuff then in as trade-ins,
Yeah.
So then we would like retail it on privately. But I ended up buying a car that caught out badly. It just wasn't what I thought it was going to be, if you get what I mean, and that sort of just
That's there's a big hit in there if something goes wrong.
I'm not going to lie, like I lost quite a few £1,000 at that time,
Wow.
So it was a big hit at the time, and like whenever you're 18, it's a lot more money then too, because you're not sort of in the position, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So sort of then that really knocked my confidence. So for a wee while I sort of stopped all of that, if you get what I mean, and as I say, just sort of focused on work just to get my head straight, and I suppose too focused on university with what I needed to do. But like the one thing I will say about uni is I didn't live up the uni experience, where you stay down every night and you go out drinking and all. So I can't really say what uni life's actually like in that sense. But I can say that the people that you meet are so different to just sitting in school, because you meet everyone from every walk of life. I actually met a guy, and I was going in at 18 and he was 25, and he was one of the best friends that I had there the whole time. But he was just a different mindset, just saw life differently, everything else, and like, I don't know, there's just something different about him, if you get what I mean, so I'd say that it's great in that way, but also then if I look back now, I'm like, in school they had told you, go out off to the edge of Scotland and work in some of the fishing trawlers, and you can be bringing in flipping, £1,600 for 10 days work, and sometimes they're getting paid in cash. Who knows, you know what I mean? But like, whenever you sit back then and you think about it like that, you're like, there's also other paths in life that maybe suit other people better, or like even going in and becoming a plumber or an electrician is a dying thing nowadays, or a bricklayer, So like certain people might have had suited that, but the school that I went to, because then after first year at school, I transferred over to a grammar school from the high school, so I then went to the Rainy down in Moncrief. But like they were very much pushing us all to be doctors and dentists and accountants and whatever else, and if you were anything less than that, then it was sort of like,
looked down upon. But everybody, misses that kind of boat, the electrician, the plumber, the spark, and that's what has the world.
Well, I mean, you realistically can't do without them, because nowadays, like, you only have to look in around the local towns, and they're building new build housing estates all over the country. Realistically, the world population's growing continually, so I mean, they're going to need tradesmen, but it's not something that like you've got a lot more probably sparks coming out now than you would have plumbers or bricklayers and stuff.
And you don't really hear about a bricklayer anymore, do you?
But like there has to still be
guys, everywhere.
But like it's not.
Where do you go to be a brickie nowadays?
I don't know. I assume that the techs still do it, but it's just not something that you hear somebody talking about. If you get what I mean, but it's like, if they had told you go and do stuff like that, like there is good money. Like whenever we were leaving university, I know guys that started in jobs, haven't done an accounting degree at £16,500, right? And you're like, you could have been one.
You were getting that in Tesco's?
I was getting more than that in Tesco's way back then, you know what I mean? That's, like, I think during uni you were maybe pulling in 24, 25 grand a year home with the hours that you were doing. So like, I was already earning more money whenever I was studying full time still than what you even would have been leaving, if you get what I mean, And like, I suppose whenever you sit back and you look at that, at school we were sort of told, if you go to uni, you'll never have any worries again. Like that's you said, once you're in a cushy career. But I mean, they didn't necessarily tell you that once you go and become an accountant, you have to then go and become chartered, and that's another 2.5 years of studying and then a year of experience. And then at that, then you're only maybe starting say on 35, 40,000, and then you still have to keep pushing from there. So like every year, then you'll be pushed up another position and whatever else, then until you actually get into a half decent position.
Wow.
But it's like,
then your half your life's over.
Half your life's over. Yeah, you could be 40 before you're ever in like a really, cushy job that you, I suppose, we were maybe led to believe that once you sort of finished
Bang,
uni, that was
you were
you,
jumping
if you
into
get
the
what I
40
mean.
bracket,
You know,
yeah.
but you know, I suppose it was like naivety and stuff too. Then really posed, but like I know people there, and like they went on and they maybe went to PwC or KPMG or EY, and they sort of signed over their whole lives to it. To be honest, you know, like I actually was with a girl at the time, and she then went on and became a chartered accountant. And she worked for one of the big companies. I'm not going to say their name, but that's fine. But they actually had a thing every Wednesday where they used to go in and sit in the canteen after they finished work. Like they would finish work early, and they used to call it Wine Wednesday. So they'd get their mugs, like a mug for tea, and they pour wine into it, sit there, drink. And I'm like, I was sitting thinking about it afterwards, and I was like, you know, something has to be badly wrong in life if you need to sit down on a Wine Wednesdays every Wednesday. Does that not strike you as problematic?
Yeah, with a red flag.
Aye, like, they send alcoholics to a program, like, you know, should the workplace not be taking a stance?
Step away.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, it just seems that you're signing your life away, but the money and everything else, it didn't.
It's the card on the end of the stick.
Yeah, like it didn't match up to what I seen life being like, if you get what I mean. You know,
yeah.
I think that's like if you go away to Spain or something, like, or Portugal, say for example, like they live such a laid back life and culture, and then you come back to NI and you're in a constant rat race the whole time, you know, and it's like,
and you never seem to get ahead.
No, I don't think so.
It's an odd. It's just life. I think it's, you know, it's another reason why I started this wee podcast. You know, to talk to other people. It's
see
like
how they do it.
See how they do it. You know, because everybody, you know, everybody's trying to figure out another way. You know, other than the rat race, the hamster wheel, the fucking grind, because our heads are filled with it on TikTok or social media. You know, where are they getting all the money from to live these lives? They're always traveling, or they're always on holiday. They're all, you know, is it just a big mirage? You know, is there different types of working shifts? I don't know. I know you go to bed at night, you go up in the morning, you work. You know, I don't want it to be like that. You know what I mean?
I'm going to ask you a question though. What would you do if it wasn't like that?
Well, I'm the kind of guy, I'll always work. But it'd be nice that I could say,
you
I
could
could take a month off.
Yeah, you could take it a bit slower, maybe and work less hours a week
Yeah.
and not be in here every day.
Yeah.
Or you could take a month off. But at the
You
same
have to
time,
have that choice. I couldn't.
Yeah.
I don't know people who can take a month off.
but I feel like also if you turned around and you completely quit work, and where then do you, like, you get pleasure in your work, and
Yeah.
I think if you turn around and tell me that you don't, you'd be lying to me, you know
Oh,
what I mean?
absolutely.
So
It would just be nice to say, right,
I'd have the option.
the option of, I'd like, let's get a camper van and we're just going to disappear for 2 months around Europe this summer. You know, 2 months, like, shit's going to hit the fan, like, you know. It'd just be nice to have those other options, you know. I like grinding and hustling and creating and building and doing. You know, I'm not looking at a freeload. I'm not looking to just sit in the house and watch, you know, TV forever. It would just be nice to get like really ahead. You know, I suppose it's just greater levels of freedom. You know, freedom to, you know, just freedom. Different levels of freedom, more freedom. You know.
But I would say that you're ready to a certain extent are free because you don't answer to anyone, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, no, I do. You know, and I suppose it's like sometimes you need to stop and look around. You know, I still have that. You know, if you want to live like a king, you got to work like a slave. You know what I mean? I still have that mindset. I'll never ever give myself the pat in the back to go, well, you know, do you really need to work fucking 4 Sundays a month? Like, you know what I mean? And it's like, do you really need to do the salary? Like, you know, because, you know, I don't. But it's just like I always say, you know, like Christmas is around the corner. You know, see if I've got 50 quid, you know, that's what Tommy will get. But if I've got £500, that's what she'll get. You know, so it's kind of like, it's like snakes and ladders. You know, you're always up a ladder, and then you're down a snake. It's like, whatever you have, you know, suppose that's maybe, you know, it's just managing money better, isn't it? Or I don't know. It's just the amount of, you know, the amount of, say you get 45, like a lot of 45-year-olds have put in a lot of fucking hours. Where's the money? do you know what I mean? It's like the world always finds a way for you to have to spend it. You know what kind of thing, like?
But that's, do you not think though, like you talk about wanting more freedom, even if you had more money, I don't know necessarily that you'd have more freedom, because you see if you earn £1,000 a week versus earning £10,000 a week, your restaurants are going to get more expensive, your hotels are going to get more expensive, your car's going to get better. You're not actually going to be £1 ahead, because like you'll go into the shop, yes, and buy a bar of chocolate, and instead of like I typically do, you go in and the pound of Cadbury's used to be like £1, and now it's £1.95, and you're like, the bar has got smaller,
and the price,
but the chocolate has nearly doubled in price, and you're sort of like, what? But like, you know, you might go in and not think about stuff like that, but in general, you're still going to look at the bills at the end of the month, because like you go to a hotel and instead of it being £100, it's like £400 or £300, and then you look at it and you're like, I earned, or you know, say you earn 10 grand a month versus, as I say, maybe, you know, grand. Sorry, but I think it was grand a week and 10 grand. I don't even know. But anyway,
well,
you know what I mean. If you've earned 10 grand that month or whatever, you know, you're going to look back then and then be like, well, I spent 300 quid in one night in the hotel. We spent £300 in dinner. There's £500 gone already. Then you still have your tax to pay. And if you're earning about 10 grand a month, you're realistically only bringing home 6 of it if it's all, you know, taxable. If you go, so like, there's 500 quid of it gone, and that's only realistically one night. You still have your car, your fuel, your house, you know, like you're still not really a single pound ahead on what you were if you were only earning 2 grand a month, but you budgeted it the exact same way. Like instead of having that BMW X5 2023, you had a Vauxhall Astra that's 2013, you know, but like you've made it work. But it's always like it's so dependent on your situation.
You're always upgrading.
Everything just elevates. It's not that you're ever like actually much further ahead, not unless you're really like, I'm going to stick to the exact same lifestyle.
I think, you know, to really get ahead in life, you gotta be boring. You gotta be really, really boring. I mean, like, work, don't do anything exciting, don't do anything fun.
Then what's the point?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You know, all you'll hear guys saying is, oh, I want to be rich. And it's like, do you really? Because if you did, you wouldn't do this, you wouldn't buy that, you wouldn't go there, you wouldn't, you know.
But do you not think it's the growth, it's the something to push towards it? It's like a goal, like the goal is not actually like a set destination, because like realistically, if you turned around and you were like, right, I've got a finite goal that I want to hit £1 million, but as soon as you hit 1 million, it's like the gold medal syndrome. As soon as you get it, it's never going to be enough. Like you're going to want more. The chase is the best part of it. So it's like, it's like my psychologist would always say to me, she's like, it's you like growing, you like building something, you like doing something, and it's like that's what gives you a certain level of meaning and purpose in life, because it makes you tick. You know, and other people maybe wouldn't get that. Like maybe, you know, they enjoy sitting about every day watching TV, and if that's what they do, fair play to them, you know. But like to me, I like doing stuff that I feel like there's some sort of reward or there's some sort of future at, or whatever else, you know. And as I say, I'm not sure then that turning around and putting it in a finite goal and being like, but once I'm rich, I don't think that that's like a real measure of success, because as I say, the goalposts of that are always going to move. You need sort of something that is always going to be a workable target that you keep going towards, that you'll never feel deflated by, if you get what I mean.
I know. And again, never satisfied. So it doesn't matter if you, and we've all experienced it. We've all set our goals, we've all met them, and then
but your goal always moves.
The goalpost always moves, doesn't it? So we're up to high school, boy, and then you went to uni. First job after uni.
2 days after I left uni, set up my first business, Smyth Training Solutions, and this is
training.
So
you know, like
interesting. Health and safety and all that sort of good stuff. So my mum is the director of a charity here in Northern Ireland called Lantra. She maybe killed me for saying that, I don't know.
Can't tell you twice.
But no, so she was like, she sort of knew that I wanted to go out and set up my own business and whatever else, you know, and then she was like, I can sort of guide you and whatever. So set up then and went to do training. So after, as I said, I'd only finished the two, had finished the grade, say like 2 days before. Like 2 days before that was my very final exam, which was my tax exam. So I'd say 2 days after that I went out, went on to company's house and set up a limited company. So like even that in itself, to be honest, I'm quite proud of it back, because it's not a straightforward process and there's no real like written manual or instructions on what you do. You just go out and do it.
Yeah.
So I done that and like designed all my logos and you know everything else. That's fine. But then I had to start taking the courses themselves. So like if I was going to teach it, I then need to be trained in it. So I then had to go and then get all these.
So what
courses
motivated this? Because I thought you had potentially done all that type of training within your uni stuff. So
No. So like health and safety and all was not stuff that you done
So-
in uni or anything else. That was completely new to me.
Yeah.
So I actually
Yeah.
studied then with.
How did you end up with that?
Well, as I
Did
say,
you just
it was.
fancy the idea of the industry?
Well, it was, as I say, it was because my mum had worked in it, and then she was like, I can sort of guide you and help you to get work and all. And
Yeah.
then I was like, this could be, I suppose, like a handy
Yeah.
number, because if you've already got someone who knows the industry
It
inside
feeds
and
the
out,
pipeline.
yeah, you know, like you could be in that winner here. So I sort of started and had taken the courses and stuff, and as I say, then I was over. Like I had an English company and I actually done some of the courses with them, and I ended up developing a great relationship with them, and they actually then offered me to go over and work for them full time later on, but never did, but that's fine. But I then started to do all that, and then on the flip side of that, then I then had to start building my own courses. So obviously then I had to get registered with an awarding organisation then to actually be able to teach the
Accredit
courses,
them.
yeah, accredit them. So then I had to sit and build out the PowerPoints and that.
Wow.
So like a level 4 health and safety course would be the equivalent of an A level, and you do that within 5 days with me at that stage, right? But
That's good.
the slideshow for that was 497 slides. I think, being honest, that took me between 2 to 3 months to build. And at this time as well in my life, I was really suffering from perfectionism. So like the pictures on the PowerPoint all had to be in the exact same place. The text had to be exact same format and size, style, everything else. Like I was so, I'm going to use the word again, but I was so like uptight about everything, you know, and it was just like, I was probably very, very critical and very, very sore of myself. And I can remember then, like, so I worked then for a year in behind the scenes after I finished uni, just like taking all the courses myself, learning what to do, and then building all my resources. And then after that, then I got a website and all my, and then launched.
Very good.
But like, I used to go down into the pizza shop in Maharat at night, and like I knew a couple of the girls that worked in there. Like on a Sunday night, usually every Sunday I would get pizza. So that was fine. And like I can remember one of the ladies, and she turned around to me and she was like, "What are you doing with yourself?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm doing training." And I used to come out and sit in the car and drive home and be like, you know, you're useless, man. Like, you never told her what the name of your business was and what you're actually doing, and if she needed any training. And like I used to hammer the life out of myself. And like bearing in mind at this stage, I was fitted at the odd wee trailer in Salmon and Dam, right? I was working maybe 50, 60 hours a week at the training, trying to build it up and get it to there. And I was working still part-time at Tesco because I wasn't earning no money for that year in the training business. So I was literally maybe working 80 odd hours a week. And after all that, I was then hammering the life out of myself mentally, being like, you know, you're not going to achieve what you want to set out to achieve because of what you're doing to yourself and because of how you're not advertising and all. And this was the slippery slope that got me into what triggered my O.c.d. This was the catalyst. This was the catalyst to that. And in the, like I used to have a really good head of hair. And around, you're supposed to say it's so good.
Hey, you're
Thanks. It was in and around that time that I started to use vapes quite a lot. And I don't use them anymore, but it was more of like a coping mechanism for stress, just continually in. And I didn't realise it, but it was actually my mum, and she was like, "Son, you keep running your hands through your hair all the time." But it was actually pulling my hair, I wasn't running my hands through it. And that's then whenever my hair started to fall out. And that's what caused it. It was all to do with stress.
So that's maybe a nice wee gateway into the O.c.d. chapter of your life. So the catalyst was stress you had overwhelmed yourself, do you think?
Yeah, perfectionism. Yeah, it really
And-
caused me to
and
get into that.
that personality
Yeah.
trait of perfectionism.
Yeah.
Started to squeeze you then.
So I would use the word suffocate. Yeah.
Suffocate, yeah. So I was going to ask you, because just look at me like a 4-year-old. You know, my knowledge of O.c.d. is just the passing remark of like someone that's a clean freak.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I have, you know, very limited knowledge, let's say, of proper, you know, O.c.d. diagnoses. So I'm glad we kind of naturally
I went into that.
went into that.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's unpack that then. Let's unpack that for people at home. So you know, people at home who might be suffering, you know, in silence, who might have the same kind of habits, you know, with the hair or you know, vaping or whatever, and they might get the what would you call it? Get the signs earlier.
Yeah.
You know, I believe yours developed quite extremely.
Yeah.
So what was the time window there then?
So that would have been like early 2021, right?
Okay.
So as I say, the perfectionism had really got a hold in there, and that's what I suppose started to suffocate me. It was the pressure that I was placing on myself. It wasn't anybody else, it was myself. But as well too, and this all ties in with the O.c.d, but as well too, I used to find that whenever I met people like, they'd be like, well, how's the business going? And they didn't even acknowledge me. It was like, well, Ethan, how's the business going? But it's not like, well, Ethan, how are you doing?
Yeah.
And, you know, what have you been at and everything else? It was just like, how's the business going? And as I say, the business had been going well, but it was stressful. And there was a lot of self-inflicted stress, and I just found it too much. And it got to the point then where I ended up, I suppose, having my very first mental breakdown. Now, there was 2 or 3 to follow, but that was because the O.c.d. hadn't been treated at that point. So it was all caused by that, but we weren't yet sure why it was the way that it was.
Yeah.
So that was the very first time. So at that time, then I got put into my local community mental health team. And I had went in, and they were sort of like, you've got depression, and then you've got general anxiety disorder, and they were like, judging by what you've told us, at that stage I just come out of a 6-year relationship, so I've been in that from I was 16ish to around 22, so it must have been nearly early 2022 whenever I sort of first got put into the local mental health teams. That had all been going on in the background for about a year. But
When was enough enough? Was it family that noticed? Like,
it was, I suppose it was at the point now where the O.c.d, like I was with a counsellor at the time, and she sort of had a bit of a just that it was there, but she was getting more and more concerned about me because she was like, I want you to go and see your doctor to get an antidepressant. You know, she was like, you need to consider the idea of a tablet to try and help to stabilise your mood. And I was very much against the idea, and I was like,
still kind of in denial?
yeah, and I suppose more it was like whenever you start to go on that tablet, you can end up with it, and that's the problem that I didn't want to get into.
Yeah.
And I, I didn't want to be dependent
For
on it.
life.
But as well, the other thing was too uneducated and naive. I didn't know any better, if you get what I mean. But that's fine. So as I say, the lady then that was my counsellor at the time, she was like, I'm getting more and more worried, and she reached out to the doctor on my behalf, obviously with my consent.
Yeah.
And then from there, then the doctor was that worried about me then, and he was like, right, you need to go in there and get some help.
So what happened in your everyday life where you needed a counsellor?
It was just that stress. It was the
Did you
overwhelm.
Did you reach out to your mum?
Yeah. Mum and dad at the house, and then
they started noticing you playing with
whatever. And then it was sort of like at that time, you know, you need to go and speak to someone. But I suppose we didn't really like it's I suppose if someone's stressed, you sort of just assume if you can get to the bottom of the stress, or everything will be grand. Again, you know, we didn't really understand the full extent of it. But in and around this time, it was very clear to looking back now, the O.c.d had already been triggered. We just didn't know why or how, if you get what I mean. You know,
but it wasn't one thing. It was a cocktail.
Yeah, it was a cocktail over time. If you get what I mean, it was just things just kept getting too much. And as I say, like in around that time, whenever say early 2022, in around that time, whenever I then got sent to the local mental health team, like I had just came out of a 6-year relationship. At that time I decided that the business wasn't going to work out for me. It was too much stress, it was just too much in general, I couldn't cope with it. And even thinking about it was causing me a lot of anxiety, you know, so the best thing...
Had to go to work.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Exactly,
you know, you had too much stuff on,
Yeah.
and it's like this, you know, it was like, for me, it was like, clients are texting you still and they're wanting stuff from you, but it's like, I'm the only person that can do said things, but it's like, if I'm not well enough to even get out of bed, how am I supposed, you know, and it was like, it was never,
connect the dots,
yeah,
keep the ball rolling.
keep yourself healthy, and even to the point where you could work, and it was just never going to work. So as I say, then I made a couple of, like, the relationship with that first girl wasn't working, so we'd had a cut, you know, like there was so many things there that all happened, yeah. And like in and around that time too, because of that first relationship, I didn't really have any friends left, because I'd sort of parted from them all. So you're sort of left like now. You're like, I've got no friends. The business that I've had is no more. The relationship that I thought that I knew is now nothing. And you're sort of standing there like, what the fuck? What has happened to my life? You know, everything that I've sort of known has just been ripped to shreds. And you're sort of standing there as a broken person, like, what's going on? And like, whenever I look back, I can remember, so they put me into like a thing called CBT, which is cognitive behavioural therapy. So essentially, like, you go in and they'll sit you down and they'll look at your thought, and like, just to share a couple of my thoughts, but it was like, one is I'm never going to be happy again. But you see, you sitting there right now, because you're not feeling distressed, that's fine. You can just turn around and be like, yeah, like, you know, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But you see, to me, because of how heightened my stress was, that actually felt real to the point that I believed that.
Yeah.
It's nearly, you know, where like, say someone with schizophrenia has delusions. Now, I'm not saying that I was delusional, but it's nearly like a delusion where you actually believe that that's the truth. Yeah, like your negative thinking has become so programmed in yourself, and it's not a choice that you have consciously kept saying to yourself you're never going to be happy. But whenever your brain continually keeps pushing it into you, you do start to believe it, and that's, I suppose,
you get all the evidence to support it.
Yeah, you did, because of the circumstances, the evidence there were right that everything was bad. Yeah, so you know, you were very much in line with that thinking, and as well then too, like from I was at school to then having left school and having left that relationship with her, I was like, I don't know that I'm ever going to meet anyone again. And again, that was like a real anxiety, real everything else, you know, because you're now in this very different world, and you know, with me having been self-employed and all, like, it's not like I was meeting females all the time, and like where you're in Tesco every day or whatever, you know, if you were sitting in an office by yourself all day, like, you know, unless you look in the mirror and be like, hello you know what I mean, like, it's, you know. So I suppose life was very challenging, but they sort of done, we use the analogy, whether people like it or whether they don't, it's the truth from my perspective. Mental health teams here in NI are like a conveyor belt. You go on to it, they get you to a stable enough place that they feel that they can put you off it again, and the conveyor belt continues, because there's that many people coming into it all the time that they can't keep up with it. So they put a sticky plaster in the situation temporarily to get you out. It's like, can you go out and see your friends? Yeah, well then you're doing alright, you know what I mean? But it's not like, I went home last night and I was sitting there thinking that everything was absolutely the worst, and I was thinking about death, and I was thinking about X, Y, and Z. Like, that's not, if you could go out and see your friends, you're doing 100% of life. And I'm here to tell you that that's such a lie, because, you know, I can actually remember a couple of weeks back, I put up a post, and, you know, I advocate for mental health now big time. One of my, like a guy that I went to school with, had messaged me, and he was like, you know, I'm not doing so hot, and being said then about going to get a coffee. Funny, he had actually messaged me then a couple of days ago, and he was just like, yeah, like, I'm doing fine and all, and like, I'm doing better and all. And I actually messaged him back, and I was like, can I ask you, I was like, are you just telling me what you think that I want you to hear, or are you actually telling me the truth? I was like, because I feel like in the past you've definitely told me, yeah, I'm doing okay, but I don't actually believe you, if you get what I mean, you know, because I know that you turn around and you say that to everyone, but it's not actually the truth, you know. And it's like, they just don't, you know, like, they don't want other people to see it, but I'm like, I'm not one of them people that you have to hide it from, because trust me, I've probably been lower than X amount of people that I've ever met, if you get what I mean. And I know what it's like. You have
something to share.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you said there was 2 or 3 breakdowns then? So that was the first.
So that was the first, yeah.
And then is that when you experienced the conveyor belt kind of?
Yeah, so that would have been the first time. So I got discharged then out of there after 6 or 7 sessions told them that I didn't want to be discharged, but essentially they were like to me, you know, they were like, if you ever need us again, you can come back. 2 weeks later, was still in the exact same position,
and what did that look like to you then? The suffocation was still there? You had your 6 or 7 sessions?
Not with perfectionism, but with O.c.d. and intrusive thoughts.
So like a negative kind of
but
dialogue with yourself?
Not even though. So O.c.d. for, I suppose you should give a bit of a breakdown. But O.c.d. typically people are like, you know, oh, you're a clean freak, or you know, you like all your juice bottles straight. That's yes, that can be a form of O.c.d. that people need to do that. But there's that's the media are telling you that's the type of O.c.d. But there's like literally 7 or 8 different types of O.c.d. And you know what? Some people even have a religious O.c.d. where they believe that they're not good enough to be like a Christian or whatever else, and that's very real. Some people have O.c.d. about eating foods, and they'll not eat certain foods because they believe that they're unclean and everything else.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different types of categories, but mine falls into pure O, which is purely obsessional. So I suffer mentally. I don't have like physical sides to it where I need to do compulsions, like squash this can up and kick it 3 times down the yard, or check that door 17 times that it's locked. I don't suffer that side.
Yeah.
But where mines would be then is like the mental side of it. So I suffer from obsessional thoughts. So one of my very first obsessional thoughts, they were always based around harm, but they were always harm to yourself. But the reason being that in me, look at my arms, there's not a single mark on them, right? You can look at my arms, there's not a single mark on them. I would say that in my entire life I've had thousands and thousands of thoughts of harm to myself, and not once have I ever lifted anything to harm myself. The reason being you don't harm yourself. The reason why it tortures you so much is it goes against every single thing you believe in. That's why it bothers you so much, because you don't actually want to do it, but your brain's trying to protect you. So it's giving you that thought all the time to try and stop it, because it feels like if it keeps reminding you, then it's going to protect you from doing it. So the worst possible things, so say for example, my thought was like, you've got a big knife over there, I'm going to take that and slit with my wrist, right?
Yeah.
The worst possible thing could be for me to do that. But what I actually need to do to try and get past that is to lift over that knife, sit with that knife, and just be with it, and then turn around and then do an ABC. So ABCs are essentially like a way to expose yourself to it. So the A is the activating event, so it's like that's the thought of me sitting there with that. The B is the belief where it's like, could I do that? Would I do that? Am I mad for having this thought? Is there something wrong with me? You know, what's going on, all that. Then the C then is like the, I actually forgot. A, activating event, B, belief, C, consequences, that's it. So it's like, what are the consequences? So it's like fear, anxiety, stress, distress, and all that. And then it's like the E then that follows on from it. So you don't have the E, you just have the E then is the evidence then. And it's like, is there any evidence that I've done that? Is there any evidence that I've done it? No. So it goes against everything you stand. Research out there shows that people who suffer from O.c.d. would never do it, and 100% of people who have O.c.d. would never ever do the things that they fear the most. But it's fear that's the reason why it's there. So I fear them things. So my very first O.c.d. thoughts were about actually ripping off my toenails. And that's something that I'd never had, but that's where it started.
How many times a day does that fire? Or is it just
it's an interesting thing, because whenever I ended up going to the crisis team down in Antrim, they actually suggested to me to count my thoughts for a few days, all the negative thoughts. And on the worst day, I had just over 1,100 of them thoughts, and on the best day, I had just over 700. And I'm going to be honest with you, Garth.
Thoughts telling you to take your toenails out by the roots.
To do that, or you know, smash your head off a table, or do different
So
various
there was
things.
a combination that wasn't just.
They're all different things.
Wow.
So like, I've had.
And this is what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
a
that would have
business, a
been
relationship, a job, a life, and you've got wow, money.
So you're fighting with that all the time.
All the
internally.
time.
So
It's
it's
trying to juggle life.
So I ended up then. I went to the local mental health team that first time. Got discharged 2 weeks later. Ended up back in. My doctor put me back. Realised it wasn't going to work. Over the next sort of 6-7 months, progressively kept getting worse. Was trying to get help, but They were doing the same crap of how are you getting on whenever else.
Still weren't friends.
Yeah, they weren't actually doing that. So went in then one day and we had asked to see a psychiatrist, and at this point I've already seen one psychiatrist, so I'm going to see the second psychiatrist, and in my time I've seen 5 of them, so I'm going in to see the second one.
Yeah.
He's a specialist doctor, so he's more fit to like diagnose different things like schizophrenia and all that. He can give you a proper diagnosis. So I went in and I explained to him what was going on, and he was like, "You've definitely got O.c.d." He was like, "No question about it." So that was fine. So he was like, "You're already on mirtazapine." Now mirtazapine's an antidepressant, so I've been on pretty much them all that they've got to offer. I'm going to be honest with you. If you ever want to know anything, I'm your guy. You know what I mean? But I've been on pretty much them all. But I was on mirtazapine at this stage, the highest dose 20 milligrams. But they were like, "You're in that much distress right now." They were like, "We're going to add you on the venlafaxine." So I'm going to be on 2 because they were like, "You're quite badly depressed." Because things were so bad, they were like, "You're quite badly depressed." They were like, "We need to try and stabilise your mood to get you to a place that we can even start to work with you." Because if you're so badly depressed, they can't even start to work with your O.c.d. because they have to stabilise that first, because everything's going to be off balance. So they done that, and things continued to get worse. I had actually booked a trip months and months before that to go to Scotland with my friends, and I went away and I went through absolute hell inside my own head. And we were supposed to come home on a Saturday, and we ended up coming home the Friday. And we were driving up the road, and we had literally only left the place that we were staying, the Airbnb. We were 10 mile out of the town. The next thing, Laurie hits us. And my friend, she takes a panic attack, and she was driving the car. I was sitting in the passenger seat of my own car, trying to do like reading or watch a movie or whatever, just to get out of my own head for all this anxiety. So our car gets hit by a Tesco lorry, and he was to blame. Like, we were in our lane, his trailer came over and hit the back of the car. That's fine. But she then takes a panic attack in the middle of the whole thing, and my mum and dad are ringing me, and they're trying to find out what's going on. I'm trying to soothe her, and I've got all my own O.c.d. going on and everything else, and it's just like it was the last nail that I needed, if you get what I mean. So we come home then that Friday night, and I was so glad to get home. And the Saturday and Sunday was in such bad form, and on the Monday then we were heading to go, my mum was heading to go down south, but because of how bad it was probably the lowest now that I'd ever been in my entire life. And we were sitting at McDonald's, and you've probably seen it on the Facebook post, and like normally, like
I like your McDonald's.
I like my McDonald's. Hey, that's not even tell you that I had one today and one yesterday, but anyway, that's besides the point. But so we were sitting at McDonald's, and like normally I go in and I get a burger, like a double quarter pounder, three wraps and whatever else, you know, and like I'm sitting there talking away and whatever. And like that day she was like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "Just get me a wrap." And you know, I only had about half the wrap, and you know, we were sitting there and she was sitting and she was like, "Son, you can't finish that." And I was like, "You can't," you didn't even have an appetite.
Yeah.
And I just turned around to her, like we're sitting there just in the car park looking over at the tire shop. And I was like, "You know, Mum," I was like, "I don't want to live here anymore." And I just burst out crying. And you know, she just burst out crying. She was like, "I don't even know what to say to that." And we rung the local community mental health team then, because at this point we were just desperate. Like there was no hope. There was just nothing. And she rung down and they were like, "We want you to come in immediately." So we went down there, and then that was the third time then that I met a psychiatrist. So I met her there, and then I met a nurse. And they were like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "The same thing that I've been here now for about months, that you still haven't worked with yet." And I was like, "I'm in desperation." And they were like, "You need day-to-day treatment now, like you need help every single day." And I was like, "Right." And then we can work with you here, it's past the point now where we can help you. And I was like, "Right." And they were like, "It's going to be an hour to 2 hours before you can get seen down in Antrim." And they were like, "There's a possibility that you're going to get hospitalised today, but we can't tell you that yet." And they were like, "But we need you to guarantee that you'll keep yourself safe for the next 2 hours." And I was like, I couldn't promise you that. And she was like, "Why?" And I was like, "Because if I had one more can of Pepsi Max and I had a vape crisis, I would probably just finish the job now." He says, "Because to me right now, life is not worth living. I couldn't bear the pain that I was going through anymore, and the reason being my thoughts were too powerful that I wasn't in control." And it's not that I didn't have any meaning or reason or purpose or anything else to life. It was this O.c.d. that had the grip on me, that I wasn't in control. And so they were like, you're too high risk then. They were like, we can't even let you go home, so you're going to have to sit in the waiting room and we've got cameras in there and we'll monitor you. So I was like, that's fine, whatever.
Ooh.
So I sat there then, and then we had left, and Mum was driving the car and I sat in the car with her. And I was like, stopping at that shop there. I was like, I want to get a vape for. I was like, I need something to take the sting off. So we stopped in at the shop, and I got a vape, and we get down Downthram, and I went in, and I was that distressed. They put in 2 nurses, a psychiatrist, and then there's somebody else standing at the door. And Mum was sitting there, and I was bawling my eyes out. And they then automatically just started to drug me. They were like, you need lorazepam, and you need to strong dosage from the very get-go. They were like, this is too intense right now. We can't even try to help you. So I was like, right, that's fine. So he put it in lorazepam and sort of started to talk to me and try and sell me a bit. And then I was like, I'm going to go out to the car park here for a vape. For they were sort of like, they tried to accommodate too, that, you know, you had a bit of space. But I turned around and I look, and I prefer he was one of the nicest people that I worked with in the crisis team. But I turned around and he was standing in the car park. He wouldn't even let me go out to the car park by himself. They were watching me all the time. And for the next probably
On reflection,
3 or 4. Yeah, oh, I understand it, yeah. But for the next 3 or 4 months, I would say I was under 24-hour surveillance.
Months?
Yeah, like my mum used to, at the very start, used to come to bed every night beside me, and like I was 23 at this stage, and then for months after that, then she used to get up maybe 3 or 4 times a night and come and check that I was still in bed to make sure that I was okay, because they were that worried if you go.
And was it a feeling or just an overwhelming suffocation? Was it always the suffocation kind
It was
of
a
thing?
suffocation, but it wasn't this time from work or from other pressure. It was suffocation by the thoughts.
Wow.
So it's like thoughts of continually wanting to harm yourself, but you can't stop them and you don't understand why they're there. But do you know what the problem is, Gareth? Nobody ever took the damn time to sit down and actually do the exposure work with me. Nobody turned around and was like, see that knife over there that's torturing the life out of you? Go and lift it and we'll sit down here and we'll actually work with it. And that was the problem. And you see, so I worked then with them for, as I say, about 4 months. Now in that time, I got discharged, lasted out of it for about a week and then came back again. And the reason why I got put back in was because I tried to take my own life. The same night that I went back in there, they knew that I had tried to take my own life, and the lady that went into the room that night said to me, you done that to try and get attention. I came home that night and I told my family, bearing in mind now that I've been in there for months, I've struggled, I've told them what else going on.
They know your history.
They know my history, they've seen everything, they know that I've had lorazepam in the house. I could have had overdosed if I had wanted to.
They have
you know,
your
whatever
files.
else, they have my files, they
That
know
was-
what's
that was
going
what
on.
she said.
They wouldn't recognise it. They had told me that I had clinical depression, which I did, because at the very start, whenever I went in, there was nothing in life. I was so numb. I can remember sitting one night at the kitchen table, that high in lorazepam, that I was sitting there swaying like this, and used to just fall asleep like that, no questions asked, nothing, just out. Whenever I went in there the very first time, as I told you, I was on mirtazapine and venlafaxine. They took me off them tablets within 2 days. Normally they take you off them in 4 weeks.
Yeah, you have to be weaned off.
You have to wean off them. 2 days they took me off them, and they took me off
Just
them.
adds more layers of
Yeah,
fucking-
so there's more layers of complexity.
Oh.
As well, numerous times it was talked about, you're going to go to Hollywood and we're going to put you under psychiatric review continually, because they couldn't work it out, and they were like, you've got depression, but we just don't know how to shift the depression. They weren't looking in the right bloody source the whole time, and that's what the problem was. But so we went in then that night, and that lady said that to me, and you know, I went in there that day, hadn't had a lorazepam the whole day. See, as soon as I came out, I needed the lorazepam. After that, I was far worse off. My mum came down, and the next day, as soon as I went home and I told her that, she was ready for the hills, she was ready to box all around her.
So.
She came down in the next day, and she just says to them, she was a bit abrupt with them, you know, when she sort of spoke her mind, but she was like, he's not coming back here. She says he's far better at our house than he is in any of your crappy services.
Wow.
Way home. I then went into the community mental health team, because I was still to work with them there, and they were like to me, they were like, we understand that you've been discharged and whatever else, tell us what we need to do that's going to work for you. And I was like, really? I was like, exactly, you guys are supposed to be the professionals.
Wow.
But in and around this time,
Jeez.
I had contacted 27 different psychologists here in Northern Ireland.
Yourself?
Myself, and I couldn't get an appointment with any one of them. And
you.
at that point, I ended up, and I was sitting there and I was like, I am at wit's end. I was like, you know, I've literally tried to take my own life once now, and I was like, what's to stop me from doing it again? Do you know what? That man sitting right there in the car right now, I had to ring him and him at work and tell him, listen, we have a big massive shed far bigger than this. and I put a ladder up and I went up a joist with the rope. And I hung there for maybe 10-15 seconds. And for some reason I managed to catch the ladder again and get back down. The noose and everything was still hanging up there, and I had a ring in it. From my rung in, he didn't go off the phone the entire time. He was like, I want you to go into the house, lock the door and sit down in the living room on the floor. And if I hadn't spoken like 10 seconds, he was like, I want you to talk to me, tell me what's doing, I want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because he was so concerned, you know,
he heard your voice, he knew you were alive.
He knew I was
He knew
alive. So
breath.
I ended up then after that, like I say, I ended up having to go and get checked out and everything in the hospital because there was that much bruising around the neck, the damage of hanging and everything. And they were quite concerned that I'd done damage to the trachea and whatever else, you know. So, but as I say, we were just at our wits' end. Like, I actually even went to my own blood work done privately with Randox to see could they see sometimes hormones and everything else can affect it. So we wanted to check out all my hormones to see was there any form of imbalance. We were literally, as I say, at wits' end. We tried everything. So I was then sitting one night and I was thinking about it, and I was like, maybe all's not lost. I was like, I've still got Scotland and England to try.
Yeah.
So I reached out to a lady. She's been a game changer, and I believe now, after dealing with, as I say, I've seen 5 different psychiatrists, I've seen a couple of different psychologists, I've seen loads of counsellors. I've worked literally with maybe 50 nurses in the time, with one person to change the game. But I ended up then meeting a lady in Scotland, and I rang her up. You know, she was actually on maternity leave at the time. She shouldn't even be working, but whenever I rang her up, she just saw the desperation. And she came online and she was like, you know, she was like, I'm not even sure that I'm allowed to work with someone in Northern Ireland. She was like, because I don't know if my insurance will even cover it. So she was like, I'm going to have to investigate all that and do it. And she actually did. Then she went and she got the insurance to make sure that it would cover it. Then she changed it so that it would cover it. And we did. Now, there was a few things. Whenever we went to do that, we had to get a clinical psychologist because they're the top of their field then. So they've studied for years. So it's not just like you've went and they've done a counselling course that lasted a year or whatever, you know, they've studied in uni, they've then went out and been like
Practice
an assistant.
Go live research in the real world.
They've been an assistant, and they've went on to be a psychologist, and then they've went on to then be a clinical psychologist, you know, and whatever else. So they've actually spent the time, they've been at it years, if you get me. And then the other thing then was too is that you had to get someone who specialised in O.c.d. We already knew at this point, they were right that I was clinically depressed whenever I went in there, but we managed to get the depression stabilised to the point that I could work with it. But the reason why the depression was still there lingering was because the O.c.d. had never been treated. So you couldn't stabilise your mood if you were continually still having thoughts of harming yourself or harming other people. So I went on then with her, and I was literally like, at this point I was like, I've rehearsed this that many times, going over all my family history, my background, everything else. I was like, I'll take the session, the first session, you just sit there and listen and jot down notes, because they ask you all the same stupid questions every single time you go in. Yeah, like literally every time that I went down into the crisis team, you nearly had a different nurse every day, and they ask you all the same questions, and I'm like, this is not for my benefit, this is for your benefit.
Yeah.
Like, give me the same damn person so we can talk about, you know, something or whatever. So I went on to her, and then we actually started to do, and to be honest at the time I was nearly a bit frustrated by the whole thing, because I was like, why are we doing this? But we started doing body work, and what I mean by that is we started to try and relax the body. And what they done was deep muscle relaxation. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, and I was one of the biggest skeptics of this, but you know what, it actually works. But essentially you start to tense parts of your body, right? So you'll tense your hands, say for example, as hard as you can go, right, for 5 seconds, breathing in, right, and then you'll let go, and then you'll count out for 7 seconds. But you see, the more that you do that, everything else in your body becomes tense. But the part of you that actually is tense to begin with, where I would carry my anxiety, is there, right, on my chest. Over time, my chest starts to not become tight, meaning my whole body started to relax itself, right? So
is that linked into your suffocation kind of thing, really?
So over time, then my body and my anxiety started to actually lessen. So the less that it was happening, the less then that's going on up in here because the physical's all linked to the actual mental. So
how often were you doing that?
deep muscle relaxation.
Yeah. Was it always the
20
hands
minutes.
or is there
No, you do it all over your body, but because we're sitting down, I thought
right.
that was the best. But like you'll tense your neck, you'll tense your forehead, you'll tense your back, you'll tense your bum, you'll tense your legs, you'll tense your, you tense everything.
Brilliant.
But I would have done that for 15 to 20 minutes 3 times a day. Now, as I say, at that point, like I hadn't worked in well over a year and hadn't done, to be honest, a whole lot because life had sort of shrunk because of that. So as I say, we started off doing that, and then we actually started then to dive into the thoughts. And so Harriet actually said to me, she was like, I could visibly see the distress in you because you couldn't hold your concentration whenever we were having a conversation. She was like, your mind would keep drifting off. She was like, over time we started to notice you getting better and like holding it more. But as I say, then we sat down and we done the exposure to the thoughts. But O.c.d. is one of them things that even to now, right now, while we've been sitting here tonight, even as we've been chatting, I've still had them thoughts coming and going in the back of my head, which again you'll sit there and you'll be like, wow, but to me that's normal. I don't understand how you don't do that because I live with that every single day and have now for years. But
what numbers are we at now?
Oh, there'll be less, I don't know, and I
still in the hundreds or still?
Oh no, there'll be hundreds, yeah, but it'll not be.
You know how to disperse them or send them somewhere else?
Yeah, they're not. I'm not engaging with them now. Is the difference.
Right.
So like in the past, you would have been like, well, why is that thought there? And then setting what keeps it going is a thing called rumination. So you're sitting essentially chewing the cud. Imagine a cow, right? It takes in grass and it chews it over several times before it swallows it. It would have been the same with your thought. Whereas now I have a thought of pulling off a fingernail. Thought comes in, the thought goes out. It's like a person standing in a train station waiting to get a train. The trains just come in and pass them, but they never get onto it. It's just by. It seems with your thoughts. So you don't actually get onto the train. You just stand there and watch it bypass.
Brilliant.
So that's the same analogy. So it doesn't have the same power over me as what it once would. Now it doesn't mean that it's completely away, but it's manageable now that I can still live and do life and do the other things that I need to. But
podcasts.
Podcasts, yeah.
First one ever. You heard it all here first.
He's looking to claim the fame.
I've been part of his rehab.
But
that was that woman. She was divine at the she turned it all around.
She just saw me at the worst and just recognised what was going on.
I think
that it's getting the right fit that's going to understand it. And like I actually went through a number of different like sequences of thoughts and different things, and you know what? They actually sat down one day and they gave me like a handbook. She gave me like a handbook thing, and it was different thoughts, right? And if I didn't bring it with me, but if I brought it with you would actually be surprised at it. But they done a study of American students, and it was either 268 or 267 American students that they asked questions to, right? None of these people have any form of mental ill health, no form of ill diagnosis or anything else, right? And they asked them simple questions like, have you ever had thoughts of veering off the road in your car saying that sign or whatever, right? And 90% of the people who took part all said yes. The thoughts are normal, but the reason why in O.c.d. that it bothers you so much is because you've got a distorted belief system, but it's not your fault. It's all actually, whenever you look back into it, there's certain
genetics?
Things, it's genetics, yeah. So like it'll run somewhere in the family. Like actually, one of my cousins on my mum's side actually has it, but it's like I had it for years and years and years, but it took it to be properly triggered. So it was probably very, very minuscule in the background. But once it got triggered, then it's never ever went away to the same extent. Now for some people, it might completely go away.
Well, it run in the family until it run into you, son.
Yeah, well, exactly. Little bit of know what it was getting.
I was getting into it.
But
for fucking play, do you mate? That is a fucking journey, and it's such early 20s.
Early 20s.
Do you know what that's
and do you know what? The one thing, and for anybody listening that's struggling with anything, whether that's I've had clinical depression, the worst type you're ever going to get. Came out the far side of it, man. Do you know what? Look at this sitting here. Do you know what? This isn't fake. Me sitting here having a laugh. Do you know what? I'm actually having a good time. You know what I mean? A couple of years ago, couldn't get out of bed. Didn't feel safe in going to bed with full anxiety. My mum literally used to lie and hug me and everything else. Again, down here now, an hour away from the house. You know what I mean? At a stage, I wouldn't even left the house. As I've said on Facebook, you know, at a stage they were worried about me getting agoraphobia because I wouldn't leave the house, and as well as they were worried about me developing an eating disorder because I wouldn't eat because of how depressed I was. You know what I mean? There's so many things.
You'd say the ringer.
But, yeah, exactly. But what I was going to say was, I actually knew of a lady here in NI, and she would have had 15 hospital remissions in 3 years, right, for mental ill health. Finally met the right psychiatrist, never been back to the hospital since. But she went through the conveyor belt system, right? They couldn't find out and didn't take the time to get to know what was wrong. As soon as she met one right person, the game changed. She actually went on, she's got schizoaffective disorder, so schizophrenia mixed with severe depression, right, clinical depression. We got the depression under control and then got the schizophrenia under control. She actually went on to get married and had a wee.
Stop it. I fucking love that.
Do you know what? Anything's possible, but I am the biggest believer in mental health. You just need to keep it until you find the right person. It's going to take the time to understand what's going on. And see, once you get one person, game changes. It's like if you go to somebody to see a shoulder, right, and you go to a general physio and they can't work it out, keep going until you get a specialist. Because see, once you get the specialist that actually knows what's going on, the shoulder will never give you bother again. You know what I say? Once you get the right, so don't stop at the first one, keep going. Because there's hope. You know what I mean? Like there's hope.
Absolutely. So was it that compression kind of physical? What was the turning point for you? What was the method or the?
There was the two things. There was the progressive muscle relaxation. So as we talked about the body, and then the second thing was in the ABCs that I talked about earlier on. So it's like the knife, and I actually sit and doing the physical exposure.
They were your tools.
They were my tools, and you see, the more that you do that, right, the very first time that you do that will not have any power, but repetition is the key. In O.c.d, obsessive compulsive disorder, right? As I've already told you, I don't suffer from the C side of it, so I've just got an obsessive disorder, purely obsessional. But it likes obsession, so I suffer with obsession thoughts. So the same thing that it's doing, hit it back with it. So you see a thought that comes into your head that you don't want to get, just keep hitting it, and you see the more that you hit it, the less power and control it it's got. So the thing that you fear the most, if I fear that there's a lion in the field next door, I need to go and stand with said lion that I feel it's not actually there, because the more that I do that, then the less control he's got over me.
Exposure therapy.
It's exposure therapy. So that's
and the pressure one.
Yeah,
and then
the body, and they were
turning points.
They were the turning points for me.
And what did it feel like when you knew in your heart, this is working? I'm getting better. Do you remember that moment, that day, or did it just happen over time?
It happened over time, but I think at a stage in life I had sort of got to the idea that if I could even get back, because to be honest, at the worst, I couldn't sleep at night. Like at the very worst, having slept 72 hours, and to be honest with you, because things were that bad, they tried to give me sleeping tablets, but the sleeping tablets didn't work. So what they actually done was they dosed me up. So normally you're meant to take 5 milligrams or 7.5 milligrams, but the 7.5 is only an extreme case. After the first night didn't work, the next day they gave me 15 milligrams, which to be honest they never do, but it was because of how bad things were. They wanted to try and get me start to sleep, because if I was asleep then the brain wasn't working, so essentially that was a way to start to trick the body. So I suppose things had sort of, started to turn around a wee bit, as I said, but I suppose it was just like over time, as I say, because I hadn't been able to sit down and read, and I wasn't even in a place to watch TV, and it's not like I just didn't feel like watching TV, but I didn't have no concentration. Because, well, it's not about enjoyment, I just couldn't focus because I was so anxious, couldn't do nothing, if you get what I mean. So, as I say, I literally would lie in bed at night and didn't feel safe, you know what I mean? So it shows you how bad the anxiety was within me because of what was going on inside my own head. But O.c.d is not your own fault. It's something that's happening to you. It's not that you're doing it to yourself. It's the best way to describe O.c.d thoughts are: imagine a plane coming down into land, but you don't control the plane. The plane just keeps coming, and you're just standing there in the runway as it's coming down. So you're just a bystander that's there. You can't control it. So, as I say, then all that had happened and everything else, and as I say, to a certain extent, I was like, if I can even just get back to watching TV and reading again. I don't necessarily have to even do anything else in life. If I could do that, life would have some sort of a meaning to it that I could get through. But over time then it did. It was fit to do wee bits and pieces here and there, go out with friends and all, and I was like, I actually could do something, maybe more. And I'm not saying now that I live a normal life, maybe like you, where I'll go back out at some stage and work 9 to 5, because I don't ever see my life being probably like that, especially not now with that being there. But I suppose now, I've made my life manageable and copeable around my health, if you get what I mean, that I can live the most fulfilling life possible. And for me now too, I've said this to a few people, but my goal now going forward is, well, one, I want to develop my business, but two, I want to go out and set up a mental health charity here in MI.
Wow.
But the different thing that I want to do, right, is I want to put counsellors into rooms. So you'll have like an initial assessment, right, where you'll get counsellors and stuff. But what I want to do here privately and then as I say, as a charity, you don't expect people to pay and they don't want donations. You know the way how it would be, like, you know, you can come and have a session and then if you're sort of to give a donation for your session, well, that's the same as charging people. That's not a charity, you know what I mean? So then have like a counsellor and then doing the initial assessment. And if the person's at the stage where a counsellor is going to be enough to help them, keep them there. But if the person's in that much distress, automatically send them to the big dog psychologist and get them the damn help that they need. And instead of pussyfooting around it for months, and instead of, you know, you ring up, like, there's Links Counselling up our direction there, they've got a charity up Macfell, you ring them up, right, the GP would recommend it to you, 6 to 8 months to get them. And if you're in crisis like I was, you're lucky if you're going to see it through the next 6 to 8 hours, let alone, you know, months, weeks, days. You know, the next
practical
60 seconds could be the most challenging of your life. And when I can remember actually sitting on with the lady one night, and she said to me, she says, if you can make it through the next minute, make it through that. And she says, and then after that, if you can make it through the next minute, make it through that. And she says, the next minute's all that matters right now. She was like, in time you can think about a life and a future and your business and whatever else. But she was like, if all that matters right now and if all that you can manage is the next 60 seconds, do that. And you know what? I was like, I firmly believe now, looking back, why I went through what I went through was because I'm not going to turn around and I'm not going to try and change the NHS system, because you know what, you may as well go out and fart in that window out there. Sorry to be so rude, you know what I mean, but you're not going to change it. But what I want to do then is go and just tackle the problem head on. And you know what, it's going to take a lot of people and a lot of funding and a lot of everything else, but that's what I'm good at. You know what I mean? I'm good at getting my fingers stuck in. I can pull together the right people to get into the right places, and we can actually set about changing something here. And you know what? Even if we only help a handful of people, at least I can get some sort of a difference.
Yeah, they'll be grateful. They will be grateful. So, where do you start?
Well,
fuck's sake! You got me all right up. Okay, get my laptop. Right, let's go.
Business plan.
Let's fucking go. Because I do have a subtle passion for you know, personal development. Like, you know, years and years and years and years and years ago, you know, I probably my missus says I'm undiagnosed fucking A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, blah blah blah. Because you know, it's just not a thing. You know, like I was sitting off the library years ago, before the internet, before our phones. You know, I knew there was something wrong with my fucking head like a long, long, long time ago. But you know where to turn. So I would sneak off to the library. Like I was sneaking off to the library 25 years ago, reading books on psychology, and as you know, and I found them hugely rewarding. And you know, that helped my life turn around. Whereas you know now, it is just us chatting about it now. It's so normal.
I think that, like, and that's. Like, I actually get people all the time popping up to me from my Facebook post being like, I hope you're okay, and I'm like, I'm doing great. I'm like, why I'm doing this is because I want somebody else to see this and be like, there actually is, but I hope, you know, he's a local lad that lives up the road. Like, whenever I was, like, severely ill, like, one of the psychiatrists that I met told me that I had probably one of the worst forms, like, the most severe forms of O.c.d. that she'd ever met, because it was, like, my brain pushes me right to the very edge of my O.c.d. that it's to the point that I nearly can't cope with it, but I just
barely.
Yeah, I just scrape it by. But as I say, I've not been there now in a long time, but that's been thanks to
But you can still see it. You know, so say when the charity's up and running and someone comes to you, you know, you can see it straight away.
Yeah, you can see how far they're being pushed and what's going on. But I suppose, you know, it's like having been through hell and back now, my mission now is to try and be the difference that, you know what, if anybody else is struggling, I've been there, man, and do you know what? I never seen it whenever I was there, but do you know what? There is actually some light at the end of the tunnel. Do you know what? Whenever I was there, like, I can remember saying to my mum and dad, like, they were saying they didn't know what to do, they didn't know what was going on, they didn't understand why. You know, nobody was giving them the correct answers. They weren't even sure if I was going to get better. You know, that's it. We were all literally at
there was no instruction manual.
There was no instruction manual, and I feel like now, if you had, you know, like an actual decent system that people could work within, it's to say, like, if somebody rings you up tomorrow, say it's a Saturday, right, and say you're years down the line, the charity's going right, but if somebody rings you up on a Saturday and it's like, you know, I'm in a bad way, we're like, right, well, we've got a slot here at 3 o'clock. Like, come in, let's hit the ballroom. Like, there's none of this, right? Well, come to us again in a week's time. You're still, you know, like,
and it could be a phone line. You know, does it have to be, you know, brick and mortar? You know, come down to the office, come down to the clinic. You know, what form do you see it in? Your charity. What form do you see it in?
Well, you know, I think to be honest with you, bricks and mortar is the way that I want to go, because getting people in face to face, there's a personal feel about it, and you know what? If we're there and people can see it, they believe that somebody cares.
Yeah.
You know, and to be honest with you, the whole thing is the idea, and I don't know whether or not it will be, because I know of one other charity up my way, and I don't know exactly what it does and whatever else, but the idea of a charity name that I like is Hope. But the reason being, because every single time that I put up a post, I keep saying about hope. But you see, for me, it's more than that. It's helping other people every day. Helping other people every day. Helping other people every day. And that's what we want to be about. We want to try and make a difference, that if people come in that door, that, you know, they're not going to be better today, but in 6 months' time, they might be the best.
When you think about your journey through the conveyor belt, not, you know, I'm reading between the lines, but at no point did you feel hope through that?
No.
You felt
to be honest, you were very much, and I think, and that lady that I actually referred to earlier on there, who's got the schizoaffective disorder, and 15 times was in hospital, she actually said that throughout her 15 different remissions that she never actually believed or seen anything in life outside of that. And it wasn't until she met that new psychiatrist who then actually, I think, just introduced her to the fact that there was more to life outside of that, that she could actually have something else. So while she still might have some form of ill mental health on a smaller scale,
you can shelve it, go and enjoy yourself, you can come back to that, you don't always have to.
It's like that. I suppose that the best way that I can describe it is, for O.c.d, say for example, they use it as like a bookcase in the library. So whenever you go into the library, right, you've got one book open and the torches stand on it. But that's how my O.c.d was whenever I met my clinical psychologist. But you see now, there's loads of books in the library, and there's loads of them open and loads of spotlights. So they're the O.c.d is very minimal now in a role in my life as compared to what it was, if you get what I mean. So that's exactly where I see it, you know, and that's, I actually posted about it there the other day. It's a recovery mindset, so it's like seeing a meaningful life while also realizing that there might be a small amount of suffering in it. So it's like, you're not, I feel like if you go into the mindset of with ill mental health, where it's like we're completely going to eradicate it, well, everybody's got a mind, and no harm, but your mind lies to you continually. I don't care who you are, and if you say, you know, even like my clinical psychologist should be like to me, should be like, you know, I have negative thoughts a lot myself. And it's like, but you can't control your mind, you can't control what's happening. If you try to, the only thing that you do is make yourself anxious and annoyed because you can't do it.
You get lost.
So it's like, you know, it's like you can turn on different spotlights in on the different books of things that actually matter, and the more that you start to do that, then you'll actually start to transform your mind and transform your life, because it's like, it's like you're sort of opening up your thinking to allow you to see something else. It's like funny, whenever we were actually listening to that podcast earlier on, they were talking about a guy who had depression, and them giving him, you know, other substances, like other drugs, like street drugs. But funny, a psychiatrist had once talked to me about this, and I've never taken any, and they've never recommended them to me. But whenever I was in clinical depression, they were like, sometimes we would use magic mushrooms, because they were like,
more mind opening.
They were like, what they're going to do is, while you see everything in dark black, they might actually allow you to see the colour purple and see everything else. And they were like, what that actually might do is open your mind up to a new perspective. So you see then, whenever someone's in like deep dark depression, that actual idea that life could be something else is what's then going to be the road to helping them to come back out of that.
Yeah.
But as I say, that's not like, a lot of times whenever people go into like severe depression, it's not actually even their fault. And I think that a lot of people have this sort of like stigma around it where, oh, you know, like it's your fault, you've done something wrong. Do you know what? Your aunt could have died and you were close to her, and that's the thing that caused it. You know, mine was stress. Like, you really don't know what's going to come around the corner. Yeah, you know, and like, as well too, the whole stigma of, you know, like going and seeing a psychiatrist and all, you know, and I had that about medication and all, you know, you walk into the room, they're normal people like me and you, they go home and they sit in their house at night, put their feet up in front of the fire. They're really no different. It doesn't make you any different whether you're schizophrenic or whether you've got O.c.d. or whether you know, bipolar. No. Like, some of the honestly, I met one lovely lad one time that I was down under a crisis team. I'm not going to say his name, but he had he had bipolar. One of the nicest lads that you would ever meet.
Wow.
Honestly, one of the nicest lads. And you know, he could be up and down mood-wise and everything else. Every time you see him, always 100%, always come in to chat to you, well, how you doing today, and everything else. And funny, my mum sat beside him one day, because they used to come down and sit in the waiting room, because they took me down every single day. And she actually sat and she chatted to him for a bit, and he had asked my mum, well, how's your son doing and everything else. And she started to talk to him then about him, and he says, you know, maybe this is what I needed alone, just someone to sit and talk to me. And like, just literally ask him about himself, and ask him about natural normal things, and ask him how he's feeling, and ask him what, you know, and I'm like, if you aren't doing that, what are you doing? You know, like,
but it's you know, that human touch goes a long way. Like, you know, we everybody is so fucking suffocated with work, pay bills, fucking go to bed, work, pay bills, go to bed, and that human touch is getting less and less and less. Like, you know, even if you're your nearest and dearest, all you're doing is arguing because fucking life has it's all stressed out to fuck. Do you know what I mean? Maybe that's why podcasts etc. are so popular, because you get to see a bit of genuineness in the world.
I think you also get to see just a bit of different takes on like people actually like.
Or you can relate to.
No, or you can relate to, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, funny, even like say with me sharing them posts there on Facebook about my own journey and stuff. Like, initially my dad had said to me, he was like, don't give away too much detail or don't say too much.
Yeah.
Like, he was like, I don't even know that you should do that, because he was like, people could use that against you. You know, or say stuff to you. Well, exactly.
Like
it's like
a,
like making jibes or having like some sort of leverage.
Yeah.
But you know,
the other side of the coin is someone is out there suffering.
Well, and to be honest with you, Gareth, the way that I look at it is, how can anybody hurt me with what I've been through? You know what I mean? That's like,
no,
you can make all the
titanium armored
like,
fucking
you can
chest plate on, boy.
Like, you can make all the jokes, you can say whatever, but do you know what, mate? It was me who suffered it, not you. So I mean, go ahead, make all your jokes. Like, you can't hurt me. Trust me, what I've been through. You know.
Brilliant. But I suppose it's kind of like that David Goggins book. You know David Goggins, the runner. Well, his book's called Can't Hurt Me. He's all about callousing the mind, and he does it through running and stuff like. But maybe he's got O.c.d. But yeah, it can't hurt me. It's like, you know, like he would have had a rough upbringing or whatever. But life hurts us all. You know,
but
enough.
I think personally I learned an awful lot about myself through spending, and like I still go to psychology now, and I only go once a month now. But like at the very start I went to 2 sessions a week, and I did for months to try and get myself back to a stable point.
Yeah.
You know, but like I think that the journey of it all taught me so much about myself, and actually and one of the things that was massive to get me back here was aligning with who I truly was as a person and what my values and morals were. And see, the more that I did that, the more that I actually started to feel better within myself, because you can get so caught up in everything else. But you know, I haven't spent time there, and I think it's in Argentina if I'm correct. But over there, once you leave school at 18, it's mandatory to attend counselling. And you have to go in, but
that's powerful.
That is powerful, and you know, and I can remember saying that, somebody judging me one day for saying that, and they'd be like, well, why would you want to do that? And I was like, do you know why you do that? I was like, because you're not sending adults out into the world as messed up individuals. If they've
Yeah.
had trauma or abuse as a child, or they've had X, Y, and Z, they're actually getting rid of all their problems
That's
before
the
they then start
that's the
to.
window
Yeah.
that's going to expose them.
Yeah, before they then go into the world, because then they're not carrying that into future relationships, and then they're not breaking other people, and then they're, you know.
Yeah,
and-
hurt people,
yeah.
hurt people.
Yeah, so it's like you're actually helping the situation. So I feel like something like that even might be helpful, you know,
That
because
would
like,
be awesome. It's a
yeah,
nice wee bridge.
yeah,
Because that leaving the school window in anybody's
into-
life
yeah, it's difficult.
it's,
Yeah,
it's a dark space, but it's so full of confusion. You know what I mean? Like I remember growing up in Antrim, if you didn't get to college that September, it was like a year of your life was wasted because you'd wait the next September.
right to go. Yeah,
And that was a very daunting. So then you were stuck in a, you know, job for another year. You know, it is a very daunting window when you leave school. What are you going to do next? It's interesting that you touched on it as a store point. You know, because I definitely felt that too. Like when I left school, there was massive expectations. Plus, you know, as we touched on, how am I going to keep a roof over my head? How am I going to clothe myself? You know, is it Maslow's pyramid?
Maslow's hierarchy.
It's his hierarchy. It's you are spot out into the world, and you don't
You're
even
supposed to know how to function and cope, but
all that.
as I say, for the first 18 years or 16 years or whatever, you've been
You've
guided.
got all
you're,
them needs
you're spoon fed. Yeah, so it's like there's a lot of questions and responsibilities and everything else there. You know.
And plus, I suppose it's a little better now. We all have all this information on our phones and stuff like. But again, you know, are you asking the right questions? Like, you know, I think it's just life. Life's hard. Life is fucking hard. There's little windows of good times, like, but it's back to being hard.
I think that's why if more people went and actually understood why they are the way that they are, or what makes them tick, or what helps them on their coping mechanisms and resilience and whatever else, like for them, then they'll be able to cope and deal with life. But I think it's you know, it's like getting to that point. Like I've actually known people who have went to counselling or have went to psychology but have never opened up and actually talked, so they know that they're struggling and they know, but then they're not actually going to sit and be honest. And if you're not there either,
You're wasting everybody's time.
you know, you are, because you know you're there to get help, so make the most of it, you know. And like just be honest. Like, trust me, I could go in there, and I actually can remember a lady once told me that a person had started to get O.c.d. about changing their own baby's nappy because they believed that they were a paedophile because they were seeing their child's own bits. That's how distorted O.c.d. can get. But you know, that was so distressing because all that parent wanted to do was love and look after their child. But that's the most important thing that matters to the world. And as I said, the research shows 100% they would never do that, or never hurt, or never do whatever. You know, but that's the thing then that caught them, and then that's what it was about. You know, but it's like you have to go in there and sit. But trust me, them psychologists have heard it all. They don't get into that position without having heard everything. You know, like my girl actually turned around to me one day and she was like, I don't think that there's anything that you can say that I could honestly turn around and be, wow, that really shocks me. I've never heard that or never expected that. You know, she was like, I think I've heard and seen and done it all by now. You know what I mean? You know, it's like, hit me with whatever you've got, you know, I'm sure it'll be fine, you know what I mean? Like, that's a small work, you know?
But I suppose it's like a maturity thing too, or like a trust thing, a truthful thing. Like, you know, you have to go in there.
But that's why I think that it's the person
truthful.
that
you have to
makes it,
click with.
You have to click with it, and I think the lady that I go to, we're not exactly identical, but we're pretty similar, and she, more than anything, she now understands how I operate, and she knows how my brain works. And so you see, whenever they understand your personality and your brain and your way of thinking and, you know, whatever else, that really helps then to understand what's going on, why you do, what, you know, X, Y, and Z. And that's probably the biggest thing, whereas if you're in that conveyor belt or getting mixed around with different people and you're getting 15 minutes with them or whatever else, no good. You know, I mean, it could take you 10 sessions before you even build a half decent rapport with a person. But as I say, psychology is not an overnight fix. It's something that it takes people. It takes people a while to work with. It's just like doing things in between times, in between your sessions that are going to be meaningful, that give you some sort of a purpose.
Yeah.
You know, in life while you go about your business, because like if you're trying to keep working and all, but it's too much, you're going to have to stop working temporarily, or you know, whatever else. Like you've got to make your life work around you. And here's the other thing, you know, whenever I was bad, they were like, they were like, would you do exercise and stuff? And you know, I tried to do exercise, and I understand that that's great whenever you feel depressed and all, but it didn't work for me, because do you know what? Whenever I was there, exercise didn't keep me mentally stimulated, so I was having loads of O.c.d. thoughts. So it was actually worse for me than it was better, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So that wasn't something that worked for me. So it might work for 99% of people, but it didn't work for me. So just because they tell you that that's going to work doesn't, you know, you have to find your own individual things.
Doesn't fit everybody.
Yeah, like it's your life. So what I would say is, don't let them dictate to you. Figure out what's going to work for you, but go with the guidance and figure out your own path.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Fall forward as such. So, what does the future hold?
Well, as I said, the future for me holds that charity, all being well, hope if not, I'll call something else. But I would like to, initially in my head I thought maybe one branch, but now I'm thinking a couple of branches, because if I could get other people in, listen, I don't want anyone to do it, I'm not doing it for money, it's not about getting a paycheck or anything else, that's not it. But I'd say getting a couple of different branches out there, and then people can come to, but that's a fast, good service, but that, like, my idea of how I want to build it and get it there is by going and tackling some of the biggest companies, and then I end demanding money off them, and essentially being like, listen, you're flush, you boys are turning 100 million here, what's giving me 10 grand, you know what I mean? Look at what you're going to do and the people that you're going to help, you know what I mean?
Even their staff?
Yeah, even their staff, if they wanted to, you know what I mean? They can come, you know, like, so I suppose stuff like that, like I've got an idea, don't have it all figured out yet, but for the future,
charity's definite.
the charity's definite.
What about Smyth's trailers?
Continued expansion. That's for me, more brands into the yard.
Yep.
And the future at some stage, whenever the time I suppose would call, a new yard, a bigger yard, and an expansion up into more products. Ideally in the future I would like to get my dad in full time into it, because to be honest with you, with my health, as I say, it's not like I'm there all the time and dealing and wheeling, you know, whatever else. Like, as I say, it's whenever somebody wants to call and whatever else, you know, that sort of works well, the appointment sort of side of things, you know. But I suppose it's then like you could have somebody in the yard full time, you know, so it's like if I'm not there or if I'm not feeling the best, then he could be there, you know. But as I say, I do have brands already in mind that I would like to get in, and I think that I could do well with them. Other brands.
Do you want to shout out?
No, I don't want to shout out. But I do have other brands of trailers that I would like to get in if you get me.
Different brands of trailers.
Oh yeah, brands of trailers, yeah. So like at the minute there, I'm stopping for DSE, so that's made by DS Engineer up for Portnoon, and then I'm stopping Grodus made down there in Kerryduff. And as I say then, like I sell chicken coops and trailer ramps and parts and wheels and, you know, a whole pile of different stuff. So like I want to keep continuing to grow up all that sort of stuff, you know, build on the product list.
And tell me this, any women on this thing?
Nothing, it's
dry. What? It's dry. We fucking dry season, boy. We can get them apps pumping. Is there any women out there want to take this boy out on a fucking date? Huh? Jesus Christ. Young, vibrant Macabale. Busking with testosterone.
Alright, now as I said,
but the future's looking good, boy.
The future's looking good, yeah. And you know what, in time I would like to meet a girl and get married and have a family, but that's, as I say, the apps aren't necessarily, I don't think they're a great way forward, you know.
They're terrible. Maybe you'll go down that town someday. You know what I mean?
You're getting married next year.
What she doesn't know won't hurt her.
Before you're married.
Well, you know, once I'm married, you know, it's a different game. I'm not married yet. But no, mate, look, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. No, you're more than welcome. That was a roller coaster, boy. That was.
I know there's one point where honestly I can feel the tears go on like that.
No,
I to hold it back in.
No, you don't well, boy. You don't have to let the microphone. But I really, really, really appreciate your honesty there, like, and hopefully people at home will feel that, and hopefully one or two might even, like, the two methods there of how to manage their own routine. Like I remember, you know, being at home and watching YouTube channels and getting little tips and little, you know, things to try different things, and I know there's somebody at home that those little methods would definitely going to help. Like, do you know what I mean? But your story was fucking raw, mate. Like, I really, really appreciate you trusting me to share that alone. Like, but no, how cool was that? How was your first podcast?
It's actually very good.
Good.
Yeah.
It popped your cherry, boy.
Stephen Bartlett, we're calling you out.
He ain't got shit on it. So yeah, no, put it there, buddy.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
And I wish you all the best. And I'd have to get another trailer off you soon, boy. Last thoughts for anybody?
Smyth trailer sales for all your trailer needs.
All or nothing.
Come on.
Yeah.